One big difference between us and the other, I'm not saying anyone else who is not an Indian or a Hindu. Because there are people in Nepal who are not Indians. There are people in Africa who follow their indigenous traditions. There are people in Japan who follow, for example, the Shinto dharma, Shinto tradition. They are followers of Sendo tradition in Korea. They are and others who are our friends. I'm not talking about that when I say other here. Other means those ideologies and communities, ideologies mainly, who have a thought system which is radically not just different but diametrically opposite to how we think. Because, for example, if you were to go to Japan, now you might be bewildered with the diversity and how different that tradition is. The language is different, the food is so radically different, the people look different, they speak a language which we do not even understand a single word. But one thing is universal and we understand, they will also go to a temple. There might be a murti and not a murti. We might not know who that deity is, we might not know who that god is, we might not know all the rituals what are happening there, but we'll understand that they are worshipping the divine and they have managed to, create forms of that divine in which is relevant to their society, which is relevant to their culture, and we respect that. We will, of course, keep worshipping our gods and deities. We will keep following our traditions. But when we go to Japan, the thought will not come to our mind that, oh, let us remove these vigrahas, these murtis, or let us destroy these temples, Shiv, or in its place, we should build our own temple, or we should build something else. This is not the thought that comes. So, what's common between us and Japan, or us and the tradition followers, Sendo tradition, and Korea, or whole of China. So China is very wrongly translated just as a Buddhist country. To us, for most of us know China is a Buddhist country, but if you even their government has now differed in the last 5 or 6 years, they've taken a difference. If you go to Wikipedia and if you check their religion, the demographics, they will say Chinese religion, Chinese ancestral religion. And they will mark as 80 to 90% of Chinese following them. So China also has an dharma of their own dharma, their own gods, their own deities, 80-90% of that. Of course, no Chinese will say we do not respect Buddha. Because which Hindu will say we respect Buddha? There might be some fanatic, that's okay. But they are less than 1%, less than 0.1%. If you ask most of the Hindus, they will say, of course, Buddhists in certain cosmology is also considered an avatar of Sri Vishnu. So, that alone, disrespecting, we respect him greatly. But does that make us not Hindu? No. Because we can worship Buddha in the same puja ghar in our home, in which we worship our own gods and deities. There is no fight between in that sense in any of our deities. So that is the common, that is the universal. There are other people, other nations, other countries which are exactly like us. Sri Ram Swamiji, when he wrote one of his greatest works, The Word of Revelation, in that he said that the responsibility of Hindus is not just to fight and preserve their own tradition. The responsibility of Hindus is to rise up, become so strong that they spread a Sanatan umbrella all over the world and help the dead traditions come back, so that their deities and their traditions come back and they become alive again. This is the responsibility that he gave, a great thinker, one of the greatest in my view, to come out from India, from Bharatvarsh in last century. This was the goal that he gave us. Now, what about the difference between us and the other which is not like us? The monotheistic religions, which think they are also called by Sri Rajguru historical religions. In that, you would also include Buddhism because it is supposed to have started from the Mahaparinirvana or the days of Buddha. So it's historical in the sense that it is supposed to have started on a certain date or at least from a certain arena. But the main historical religions, or the main, we also call them Semitic religions, but the most universal and after, as Siddhartha said, another great historian, great thinker of our time, he called them prophetic monotheism because what is central to them, they have a prophet or prophets or one prophet, and monotheism is not worship of one deity. Monotheism is the worship of worship. It's not exactly worship. It is following, believing in one form of one deity. Not even other forms allowed. In most of their history, actually, even Christianity did not portray Jehovah. Their God is the biblical God Jehovah, and he is not portrayed at all. Just like Allah is not supposed to, be drawn or imagined also. So Jehovah was also supposed not to be there. So what about that tradition in ours? There are many differences, and I have taken an entire chapter, which is a long chapter, the fundamentals of prophetic monotheism. I will not go into all of that, but one significant difference between us and them, between us and the other, is that we are a society which is a practice-based society. They are a belief-based society. Now, how is that difference? Because I will take a quote of Ali brothers, the so-called freedom fighters. They said about Gandhi, one of them, when they were asked about Gandhi, and they said, Islam teaches me, and he quotes a particular verse in Quran. He says, Islam teaches me that even if Gandhi is the best Hindu, he will still be worse than the worst Muslim. So what is he doing here? He's saying that belief is more important than action. How do we judge? How do we judge ourselves and others? That whether a person is good or bad, or whether an action, even not individuals, whether he has done good deeds or whether he has done bad deeds. That's how we judge. That's how we imagine that everyone should. But that's a great fallacy, because I call that Hindu well mentality, and we are 1 billion, so our well is so big that we meet other sects and we think that just like Vaishnavas behave to Shavas, Shavas behave to Shaktas, Shaktas behave to Vaishnavas, so would every other sect, tradition in the world, mistakenly called a tradition in the world, would be. But that is not true. Another very significant distinction between us and them, and how we are a practice-based society and they are a belief-based society, is that the central tenet of Christianity is what? That man, first of all, you have to believe this. You cannot shut. You cannot not believe. First is that man is a sinner. Now, this concept doesn't sound right to Hindu. Sinner, of course, we have done some bad things. Everyone does. That's why we are born. Prarabdha means that we have done some good and bad, a mixture of good and bad things. So, like nobody who's alive today has done no bad thing. Aisa to hota nahi. We have all done some bad things. But that doesn't make us a sinner. It means that it's not like we are born to sin only. We do good deeds also. So we are just like we do not call ourselves do-gooder. So it doesn't make any sense to call ourselves sinner. Because what happens is that when you call that, what is their meaning of sinner? Which means that you cannot escape sin. You are a sinner. How? Because in biblical history, Adam sinned against the commandment of God. And what was his sin? And many versions, he tasted the forbidden fruit. The fruit comes later. It's not in the Bible. But, a lot of people interpret it differently. But he disobeyed Jehovah. He disobeyed God and agreed with Eve, the first woman, as they say. And so he disagreed. So, because he is the ancestors of all human beings, and because he sinned, so we are born sinners. This is a central belief we have to literally believe in it. Now, why is this so? Adam sinned, so somebody else sinned for us. This concept is so alien to us. How can somebody else do papa on our behalf? Like, papa has to be done by us, just like one has to be done by us, but somebody else sinned for us. So outsourcing of sin. Somebody else sinned for us. Now what happens? Now somebody else came and saved us. That is Jesus. So Jesus is the savior. Just like man is a sinner, Jesus is the savior. Savior in that sense, and we are not allowed to save ourselves. There is no way in which we can save ourselves without Jesus. You have to accept Jesus as your savior, and this is the terminology in which they talk when they convert. They say he has accepted, or certain Vivek has accepted Jesus as his savior, which means he has started believing in the dogma that man is a sinner and Jesus has saved. So sinning is also outsourced, saving is also outsourced. What do we do here? We sign declaration that we declare our trust in Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and all. That's all we can do. हम केवल चलान पर साइन कर सकते हैं, हम और कुछ नहीं कर सकते. It's not in our hands. How is our system different? Here, nobody else is going to come save you from whatever karma you have done. It seems hard at first that nobody else is there, but it is 100% in every individual's control to absolve himself of the cycle of life and death, which is the greatest goal in our dharma tradition, is to get moksha. How to do that? To meditate, to raise our level of consciousness to a level where we realize the false identity of ourselves, and we realize our true identity. That is called, in various things, English they call approximation, self-realization. So in that, entire agency of saving ourselves is with the individual himself or herself. He does not have to look outside. In fact, this is so deep that in also the scriptures in popular language also, I come from Madhya Pradesh. There was, you might have heard about him, there was a famous singer, folk singer, Kumar Gandhar, and he has sung very beautiful devotional bhajans about the greatest spiritual truth. One of that is very beautiful, Urjayega Hansakila, if you might have come across it. So Urjayega Hansakila means he's talking about the soul and the spiritual aspects. And there is one line in that, I've also written about that in the book. There is one line where he says, Guru ki karni, Guru jayega, Chele ki karni, Chela. In which he says, not even a guru can walk the path for the shishya. He can show him the path. He will guide him through. But he cannot walk for the shishya. So not even a guru will absolve you of all your karmas that you have to do yourself. So this is the absolute agency. This is the kind of agency that Hindus and all traditional systems all over the world before Islam and Christianity took over. Every traditional system had this sort of, not belief, but this sort of worldview about themselves. That if there is something bad, then we have the control over ourselves. Nobody is coming to save us. Nobody is coming to sin for us. We do not outsource karma. Karma cannot be outsourced. So that is a belief which goes, and you see it even in modern civilization. You are told to, why don't you buy a service for something that you do at home? For example, there are now services for everything. For example, if you have children from 3 months, you have, or even in 1 month, you have crashes in other places. So why waste time on inferiority? They say you can outsource it. There is a service which you can buy. You spend money, economy grows, and you will be shocked how they give examples of this in classical, in very mainstream classes. For example, they give the example of one family in which only one person works, husband or wife, and the other remains home and brings up children. He says now economy is not going to this. What will happen? How does economy grow? If you put the kid in school or in crash since he's 3 months old, then for that, first the mother or the father has to go out and work, both have to go out for work. Then put the child in crash or some other such institution. And what will happen? Both of them will take some transport. Both of them will, go outside. They will learn something. They will spend something. You put the child in some institute. Then you will spend something. Then the child might have childhood trauma because of being there so much of his time. And then there will be therapy which they recommend. So GDP, this is the traditional example that they give. GDP grows 7 which ways. So why not do this? Because that growing the GDP is the only goal in that sense. So this is just a small aside that I took. But that's a civilization of outsourcing. Outsourcing even saving, outsourcing even sinning. So our society is based on, our system is based on practice and not belief. Belief doesn't mean anything to us. To be Hindu, and a lot of Hindus I'm very happy to see have started saying I'm a practicing Hindu, not a believing. So they say I'm a believing Muslim or I'm a believing Christian. We don't say I'm a believing Hindu. Because there is no belief here. There is activity, there is practice, action and practice. I'm a practicing Hindu. Means when I wake up, there is some ritual in my life. Either I meditate or I do something. So I practice Hindu Dharma. So I am a practicing Hindu, not a believing Hindu. So what is that difference? Because a lot of people will say, Vedas, we also have the concept of Shabda Pramana, which that word is an authority here. We have the entire system of Pramana in our tradition. But they say this is like, Bible is truth and Quran is truth, and it is the same, it is not the same. Everything that is written in our Shastras, in our texts is verifiable. Just that the laboratory is different. In the scientific laboratory is of course outside. The laboratory of yoga is inside. You turn inwards, you do meditation, and then you find that everything that is mentioned in the Shastras is true at some place. The truth written in the Upanishads is what every countless of Jnanis and Jivan Muktas over the history of Bharatvarsha have gone on that journey, internal journey of yoga and meditation, as they have found those truths to be true. Nobody has disagreed. That's why Vedas are Shabda Pramana. Because they were created by Jnanis, then they were confirmed by countless of Jnanis. It's not similar to there. And that's why it's difficult to practice Dharma. Because there is something to be done. There, it's only thing necessary is belief. There is nothing else. Only thing necessary is belief. Of course, in Islam they will enforce some practices on you. But even more than that, belief is more important. You cannot unbelieve in some of the central tenets and dogma. For us, example, if some person does not worship Sri Ram, can you say that he is not a Hindu? It's not true. He might worship Krishna, he might have Astha in some other deity, he might have Astha in Bhagavati, and that's entirely okay. Nobody will force him and say that this is one deity you cannot not believe in. That is not true. So this is why we are a society based on practice, and that's how when you have pramana of something, when you can testify, when you can check whether what is written in your book is true or not, there is no need of violence. Now, where does violence come in? Prophetic monotheism, which is Islam, Christianity, Judaism. Judaism doesn't convert anymore. It used to 3,000 years ago, but not anymore. So it's not a problem for us because no matter how bad you may think about me, thoughts you may have about me, if you don't force it on me, that's okay. But if they tend to convert, their central tenet is everyone else has to be converted to their brand of religion and their brand of ideology, then the problem comes in. So this is why we need to be aware about them, because in their theology, their cosmology, it shouldn't be called cosmology exactly, but theology, it is very important that they propagate their religion by converting whole of the globe, all of society, to their own brand of religion. And there is a lot of fight between them. For example, in Islam, there is not just two sects, Shia and Sunni. There are many sects, many smaller sects. For example, the Ahmadiyya sect in Pakistan, some Ahmadiyyas are here in India too. They are also an Islamic sect. The Baha'i, the Lotus Temple, they are actually Muslims from Iran. And they are not peaceful. If you read their book, it's even more violent than Quran. And their goal is also to convert whole world. They are few lakh. And their goal is to convert the entire globe to Baha'ism. They have copied Quran almost word to word. The only dispute is that they don't think that Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet. They say that Baha'u'llah is the last prophet. And so this has made them a pariah, made them enemies of the mainstream Islamic societies. And Christian societies also have, according to one count, Christianity has 24,000 sects. So it's not like they are united. They have a lot of unity. But what happens is that when they look at so-called pagan polytheists, people like us who worship murtis and vigrahas, they see us as hated idolaters to be converted. So all of them will agree that these people are wrong. They worship devils. They worship the Satan. And so all of us have to convert. So for us, it is, the problem multiplies manifold because all of these sects want to convert us. When one sect is defeated, another comes in, third comes in, fourth comes in, and then the endless streams just keep coming in. All of them believe in this. Now, why do they believe? Why does violence come in here? If you go in the history of religion, Europe, this idea of secularism came from there. It's not our idea. And how did it come there? Because 400 years ago, what happened is that Protestant revolution came. They said that Catholic Church cannot have the monopoly on, Bible, and everyone can read the Bible. But who everyone? That was the time when they could have read that, you can, just like Hindus do, anyone can read Gita. And also extract meaning from it. That's okay, they are free to do so. Unless they force everyone else. No, but they did not do so. Because there is no meaning of Satyapan, there is no meaning of testing whether something that is written in their book is right or not. We have the means to test. Do yoga, do meditation. You will realize those experiences. But for them, there is no way. It's one person's word against another. So what happened 400-500 years ago, when Protestant revolution ended the monopoly of Catholic Church, many churches came, and each church started saying, we have the correct interpretation of the Bible, everyone else is wrong. And what happened is that small kingdoms, small principalities started adopting one after another of those sects, and they said that everyone else has to be killed or forced to convert to our sect of Christianity. This is happening between Christianity only, by the way, not even others are involved, between different sects of Christianity. So then they said, then there was so much bloodshed for 100 years. Then the society sat down and say that this is, if we keep doing like this, we will eliminate ourselves. So then this concept of secularism came, that no king can proclaim a Christian sect to be the state religion, and you have to keep your religion in private and not show in public, so that this peace is restored. So it's basically their convention. But why is that so? Why was there so much fight? Because once I can understand that Catholic Church, one institution might have, created a monopoly. But when that monopoly was ended by Protestant revolution, why did the violence not end? It should have ended then. The violence increased manifold. It is because they have no means of checking. They do not know what is the fundamental means of checking the truth, which for us is meditation, which for us is yoga. Take a diksha from a guru, maybe in a sampradaya, go on an internal flight of meditation, increase your states of consciousness, and see the truth for yourself. Witness, experience the truth for yourself. They have no such means, and that's why all the violence. So all the traditions which focus on action, focus on practice, they are dharma. All the ideologies which only focus on belief, they are not dharma. That is why religion is not dharma, dharma is not religion. That translation has confused Hindus to such extent that we have created a society where we completely unaware of which are the ideologies that want to prey upon us. For example, allowing monotheistic religions in this country to propagate yourselves is like saying, and when Hindus have no idea that there is something like religion, they think it is another sect. What do most Hindus believe? एक और पंथ है, just like Vaishnavas, and because of their own history, Vaishnavas are very particular about their own, deity and own way of worship. But they will never think that Shaivites have to be killed or converted to Vaishnavas. Similarly, the Shaivas will not do that or any other sect, and this is their experience. So they think that it is another sect. But when this translation happened of religion to dharma, that was the greatest damage that it did to our country. Because here, when constitution allows you, it is like saying that prey and predator have equal right to eat each other. That lion and goat are equally allowed by this book, by constitution, to eat each other. We all know what will happen. Because the goat has no means to eat the lion in that sense. We do not have the concept of conversion as of today, as of now. But they do. We do not have the belief that others have to change to my, persuasion. They do. And that's why it has become very dangerous. That's why a lot of our thinkers like Rajendra, before him, great followers like Sitaram Goyal, Sri Ram Sarupji, Swami Dayanand, Swami Vivekanand, Sri Aurobindo, tried to awaken the society about threats and dangers that it faces. Even today, we have many of these dangers, the same but more also. Because secularism as a concept, when it was implemented, it blinded only one side and kept strengthening the other side. So Hindus are unaware. There was no need of a system like secularism in India because no Shaivites were killing Vaishnavites or vice versa. That happened in Europe. That system was necessary in Europe. That system was not necessary here. But when we implemented, we back projected that our society might also have had such problems. That's why it is necessary. Today's Hindus, most Hindus think, अगर secularism नहीं होगा, we'll kill each other. That's not so. That is not how it is. So you gave a wrong impression in the society that this is true. That's why it is necessary to know about our own selves, who we are. Some of the most fundamentals, I am not going very deep into it, but to just repeat in 1 minute or so, karma, the idea of karma, prarabdha, punerjan is very central to all Hindu sects and all of our traditions. That all of Hindu cosmology depends on this. This is not a belief; it's an axiomatic truth. Axiom is something which exists but which you cannot prove through rational methodology. Science also depends on a lot of axioms. Theories can be proven, axioms cannot be proved, but they exist and you can see its effect, you can experience its effect. So similarly, there are some axiomatic truths in Sanatana Dharma. Karma, prarabdha, punarjan is that. And then there is this concept of rita, rena, and dharma. Rit is the cosmic order, and ren is cosmic order creates a debt on us. For example, when we are born, we cannot eat or relieve ourselves. Our mother, our father, our family does that for us. That creates a rena on us. So they have listed 5 kinds of rena: Deva rena, Rishi rena, Pitra rena, Nar rena, Bhuta rena. So you have to ask kartavya. Our duty is decided by when you pay back rena, that is dharma. What is your dharma? That being this person, what is my duty towards all of these in these 5 spheres, in these 5 dimensions? That will decide my kartavya, and that is what it means to be a Hindu in this era. So these universals we need to know, because in independent India, in 2020, National Education Policy, for the first time, Indian government introduced Indian knowledge system, and in that actually some knowledge of dharma, some knowledge of our own culture and dharma and tradition is being reintroduced into curriculum. Otherwise, we were brought up with blank, no knowledge of our own dharma, our own culture. And while monotheistic communities had their own parallel systems, where they kept, educating their children in their own, we will not call it traditions, conventions, and religions and ideology, but we were not able to do so. That's why it's important to us. Why Shatru, people ask? Because an ideology which says it's a stated goal to destroy your society and your dharma, it's very commonsensical to believe that it is true. The Quran and the Bible declare that it is a very virtuous act to destroy vigrahas, destroy temples, and other gods. They are devils, they are forms of Satan, and so it is imperative to destroy them. Any ideology which springs from that culture, to me, it's very commonsensical to consider it a Shatru. Our society needs to know more about them. Our society needs to know about their own fundamentals, and that's why I thought of writing this book. Thank you so much for patiently listening to me on this topic. I try to keep it short. If there are any questions, comments, they are most welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
A thinkers whose work has enriched our understanding of Sanatana Dharma and sharpened our perception of the challenges facing our civilization. I speak of Sri Pankaj Saxena ji, a scholar and chronicler and courageous voice in contemporary Hindu thought. Sri Saxena's scholarship is not merely theoretical, it is rooted in a lifetime of deep engagement with the lived tradition of this land. He has traversed the length and breadth of Bharata, visiting and documenting over 1400 ancient temples, as Madam has mentioned, each a serious witness to our civilizational story. His writings span Hindu temple architecture, Indian aesthetics, literature, cultural anthropology, evolutionary biology, and the dynamics of our society. As co-founder of Behar, an institution dedicated to revival of Indian knowledge system, and as a associate professor and director at Rashtrastham School of Public Leadership, he continues to inspire a generation of thinkers and leaders. It gives me immense pleasure to speak today on a subject that is both timeless and urgently relevant, the essence and importance of what we call Sanatana Dharma. Known to the world as Hinduism, the term Sanatana means eternal and Dharma signifies that which upholds, sustains, and harmonizes life. It is not merely a religion in the narrow sense, but the very civilizational framework that has guided the spiritual, ethical, and social life of this land for thousands of years. Sanatana Dharma is not the creation of one prophet, nor the product of a single historical movement. It is a living stream, a civilizational flow, Sanatana Ganga Pravaha, constantly moving forward while keeping its unchanging spiritual core intact. Its foundations were laid in the Vedic times and over millennia, and countless sages, rishis, thinkers have enriched it through reflection, debate, and lived example. The crux of Sanatana Dharma lies in the understanding that life is not an accident, nor merely a struggle for survival, but a journey towards the realization of ultimate truth, Satya. This truth is not separate from the individual. It is essence of the self, Atman. The purpose of human life, according to Sanatana Dharma, is to realize this truth, to break free from ignorance, and to attain moksha, liberation from cycle of birth and death. This vision makes Hindu Dharma unique. It recognizes many paths to the same ultimate goals, whether one follows the path of devotion, that is bhakti, knowledge, jnana, meditation, dhyana, or righteous action, karma. All are valid means when guided by sincerity and discipline. This openness flows from the recognition that human temperament and circumstances vary, but truth is one. The wise call it by many names. One of the most remarkable features of Hindu Dharma is its ability to embrace diversity without losing its unity. Over the centuries, countless philosophical schools have coexisted, sometimes debating vigorously, yet recognizing a shared civilized foundation. This inclusiveness is not mere tolerance, it is rooted in the philosophical conviction that the divine is infinite and no single form or path can exhaust its fullness. This is why Hindu Dharma has never sought to annihilate other spiritual traditions but to find a place for them in the cosmic order. Today, we stand at the crossroads, and hence the relevance of a remarkable book, Swayambodha and Shatrubodha, Hindu View of Self and the World. The book has increased in relevance. The core idea of the book, this book is more than a book. It is a framework for civilizational survival and renewal. The two key concepts, Swayambodha and Shatrubodha, are presented as the twin wheels of the Ratha of Bharatiya civilization and joined by an axle of Dharma. Svayambodha is the knowledge of the self, the clarity of who we are as Hindus, our identity, our roots, and our duties, and our unique spiritual vision. Shatrubodha is the awareness of who and what threatens us, recognition of ideologies and forces that seeks to undermine, absorb, or annihilate our civilization. Saxena reminds us that both are essential. To know only the enemy, but not oneself, is to fight without a purpose. To know only oneself, but not the enemy, is to be unprepared for the trials of survival. The author points out that the strength of Hindu society lies in its viveka. It is power to distinguish between dharma and adharma. This discriminating wisdom, when alive, makes our culture flourish, but when dulled, as it has been in recent centuries, our society weakens. So, in Swayambodha, Saxena sir takes us to the heart of Hindu life, the knowledge of karma and punarjanma. He shows how dharma is lived through rituals, customs, and sadhana, not as a rigid dogma, but as a living tradition aligned with the nature and truth. In Shatrubodha, he does not shy away from stating hard truths. He examines why civilization with strong enemy awarenesses like Islamic and Christian societies have endured and expanded despite internal divisions. The Hindus, he warns, have often hurt by extending chivalry to those who would show no mercy in return. Without clear recognition of hostile forces, we suffered repeated historical setbacks. Friends, we live in an age where the Hindu civilization discourses have shifted from the political to the cultural and metaphysical. This is the time of intellectual churn and also a great peril. The Pankaj Saxena ji offers us a meta framework, a way of organize our thoughts, secure our identity, and act with clarity in a world where information overwhelms and attention is fragmented. This is not merely a defensive stance. The Swayambodha and Shatrubodha equips us to preserve our tradition while adapting them for the present, guard against ideological subversion, nurture the next generation in dharmic values, navigate debate on identity, culture, and morality without losing our mourning in dharma. In this book, Pankaj Saxena has done what our times demand, coined clear terms and mapped their full scope, and offered a vision rooted in our eternal tradition, yet mindful of present challenges. It is, in my view, both a wake-up call and a handbook for cultural renewal. For those who wish to understand what it truly means to be Hindu, for those who wish to protect the civilizational treasure, for those who want to ensure that our diversity and inclusiveness survive amidst that the troubles of the modern world. This book is indispensable. I salute Sri Pankaj Saxena ji for this contribution, and many more thinkers follow in his path and combining rigorous study with civilizational commitment. Dhanyavad. Dhanyavad.
I promise you that this is a topic that has been debated, fought through so many times amongst the thinkers who are gathering. Merely that it's a Saturday and a slightly chatted feel today. Yes, there must be a long weekend. Bangalore tends to take all of that very seriously. I want to start with a very personal recollection. I was a teenager when I read Svayambodh talking about the need to understand and fight at the ideological level. And I remember reading the Quran and deciding I'm going to read it. I think that was the day that the first day that my family said was that, what is happening? Who are you? What has happened to you? Who has corrupted you? And that simple thought that I have that to want to learn, to understand that the Shatrubodh allowing for my Svayambodh to grow was an alien thought from a very conservative family in South India. I wish we had more open conversation on the other and ourselves. But while doing so, is there a way that in the process of understanding Shatrubodh, we get lost, our Svayambodh gets questioned? That would be my first question. But I want to quickly understand how many people here have a question, who can we come to start our conversation with. Any hands that would like to go up, or we can start this conversation. So yes, we spoke about this also yesterday. Ashtrabodh, the understanding of oneself individually, there have been new channels that have opened up in this society that we live in today. But what are the methods to Svayambodh, and when do we have to be cautious that an understanding of Shatrubodh could impact Svayambodh?
Yeah, that question is why. The answer is why I have kept the two bodhas together. Because a lot of people suggested me this book is becoming long, and I published on the website. Maybe you could divide it into two parts. So Svayambodh and Shatrubodh. But I said, no, I don't want people to think one can exist without the other. Because if I divide it, and if somebody like that only the second part or the first part, they will think that this is enough, but that is not enough. And why that I kept activating even before I written the book when these thoughts started coming. First is no amount of Svayambodh, no amount of very good book about yourself is going to prepare you for all the novel dangers that might strike upon you in the future. Why? Because Dharma in this sense can be of infinite varieties. Dharma is only one in the sense of one kind. There are many paths, that is true. But Dharma can strike in many different varieties. And when it does for the first time, there is no option but to study that particular stream and to prepare the society with full much about that. For example, in a similar example and comparison, when India and the world suffered from corona, so a lot of these thoughts came. So when a new virus comes in the society, at first you have zero defense. And a lot of people are infected. But once they are, and once you create a vaccine, then those who survive, they have become far better than before. So there is no way in which you can prepare for an oncoming problem, which is so completely novel that your existing system has nothing for that. There might be some indications. For example, our Shastras, if you look at them, there are some stories which do tend to warn us about the system. For example, the story of Narasimha Swami and Prahlad and Jayakar. If you read Bhagavatam and if you read Vishnu Purana, certain passages about Jayakar, what he's saying about Vishnu to Prahlad is exactly what a missionary tells and asks Sahibul. With your Vishnu, if I break this murti, will Vishnu come? If I break this, will Vishnu come? I cannot see him. How is it sure that he exists? I am rich, I am powerful, worship me. I am visible, I am real, I am complete. So these are the things that sometimes missions is still saying. Akhlaq in one of the proto-prophets with whom Moses was inspired by. One of his speeches survive on a stone stele. They are exactly like the description of later biblical gods and Quranic gods. So there have been some indications, but it is necessary to do a very good thorough work, because when Buddhism came at that time, it was an intellectual adversity. So if you see our tradition, we wrote millions and millions of commentaries on Buddhism and various streams of Buddhism. So when it came, we started doing a full touch. That's how it happens. And without Swayambodh, the second part, without Swayambodh is, if you are not aware of what to preserve in society, then you risk becoming the other. Because when you have lost control of who you are, when you have lost sight of who you are, for example, a lot of people say, oh look, they are strong because they, and this quote unquote, they keep their women under control. Look at how they treat them. Like in Burkhan. Maybe you should do the same. They are so powerful. But when you do this, you become them. And then there is nothing there to say in your society. So it's extremely important also to have a good sight of who we are. Now, I am not saying this principle should be applied anywhere. People use it for shaka also. That if we also, face them in the way they do, then we also become them. No, that is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. We should counter them as it has to be countered. But in the process, we should not turn our society into how their society is. Our society should be where women are free, where our children are free to pursue science, arts. It's an open free society. In order to preserve this, we have to fight. And so it's extremely necessary to have a very core view of what Svayambodh is. Svayambodh, as in just one line, it is the common Hindu program, because there is so much diversity in Hindu Dharma. And Sanatana we allow all good things. So if you sit down and say this practice and that practice, there will be differences, every district. And you won't be able to, people will fight on this and that also. Even under such a central idea on of our civilization, and just coming from Pune and from their center, they are right. So they will say, no, how can you say that is the central idea of our civilization? We are right parties, and they have all the right to ask that question. But there are still some fundamentals which I discussed with you. The idea of Karma Paramahansa, the Shangla of Vita Satya, the idea of Panchagana and Karma, this is common to all of us, and the idea of Karma, practice of meditation. This is central to us. Without experience, there is nothing. Without practice, there is nothing. You cannot practice. So these are some basic common minimum Hindu program. Let's say that on this we all agree. And everything else, we are allowed to eat, say, speak, wear, whatever you want to do. When that is why there were no language gods in India until the 70 years ago. We have started that now, copying the West and copying all other civilizations. We never used to do this before. Nobody thought that, just because the language is spoken by 60 crore people, it should be imposed on. That has become national language. I consider this might be controversial, but when we said Hindi should be the national language of India, that was a seminal mistake. This is a nationalist thing. I am a Hindi proud of this because when I speak Hindi, I tend not to use Farsi or English words. But how do you call it a national language? Can a Hindi language, okay, lingua franca, okay, and that would have grown, Hindi would have grown on its own. But the moment you institute that as national language, people ask that what is their thing? And one answer was, until just 10 years ago, it's the language of more than one state. Now, Telugu is more than one state. And other people can play that game. Karnataka and say we are dividing ourselves into 11 states. And now we are more states speak Kannada than they speak English. So you can add anything and you can play this game. But we never got into this because we thought that this expression also is always the prerogative of shaper of the certain geography in which you are inhabiting. So your language, your food, your customs, your practices, they are yours and we are not going to invade and force you to follow us. There are some basic darshan. Sanskrit was that link which used to provide that deep darshan thoughts to all languages equally. But when Sanskrit was removed from that pedestal and Hindi started occupying it, which was itself adulterated along with Farsi and Turkish, then this jhagda started between us. So if we don't understand these issues, then we run the risk of Yes, the problem is in our society. We never fought like this first. Now we are, look at there, we have that beautiful video of Ayush Shraddha, absolutely wonderfully done. That 70 years ago, that even that would not have been possible. अभी तो कितना झगड़ा होता है ऐसा सब हो रहा था. So we were never this even at the time of our independence, but now look where we are. Because we have forgotten who we are, what is the core, why we are better, why we are different. When you forget that Svayambodh, of course you will end yourself in difference. Thank you.
Picking up language is always slightly controversial in Karnataka, but you seem to like to go into those spaces with a lot of gusto. So I want to ask you a slightly controversial question on that front. A lot of people who I have had the opportunity to have conversation with on the bottom line, okay, I'm an atheist, I'm very low. There's a lot of people like that who do not make this effort to come here. I have felt sometimes they have valid points. At the human level, they have valid points. And if any of us have lived abroad or had the opportunity to be amongst people from different worldviews, different ideologies, like you rightly said, that Svayambodh is clear. When we have done that exploration, it's a lot easier to open up and understand. But at the human level, and finally a lot of people from those parts of the circle come back and tell us that this is all great, but we're not looking at the human level. That argument frustrates me because here is not a conflict between me as a human and you as a human. It is a conversation between this as an idea and this is an idea. Have you encountered such people when you were having this, when you were writing this book, and how did that inform your thought process?
Actually, that happens all the time. I encounter such arguments and people all the time, not just in the book, but even before that. And it's true that most of the people who are making these arguments are also motivated because they just want to criticize the system and do not want to protect another system. But if you were to name them, that is, for example, it picks on human issues. And let me say, they are not wrong in picking those issues. There are significant problems in every society, in our society also. What is happening in the new movement inside, we have not enough talked about human individual problems still now. And we should. Because if you do not go to any field and they will appropriate the entire debate, entire platform, and then they will tell your youth system doesn't even care about who is an individual. For example, we do install family as a great institution, and we should. But can we pretend that there is no problem in family, in Hindu family also? We keep installing the virtue of joint family, but a lot of us would not be here had listened to our joint families, what they told us to do, which was not this. I was told all my life, doing this, all of these ideas. Make some money from the value, do all of this. And this is what my joint family instructed me to do. Was there no problem here? And marriage is, of course, a beautiful institution, but is there no problem there? Joint family is a beautiful institution, but is there no problem there? When we stop talking about all of these things, then actually leftists in total hijack these issues. But because the goal is not to destroy our society, I have classified them as left liberal and all of this as ideas as enemy of Hindu society. Their goal is to dismantle and deconstruct Hindu society. But the issues that they take on are not wrong. For example, if any one of us remembers a beautifully done but very political movie made in Maharashtra, extremely well done, Saira. It became very famous. Bollywood made like it does a very good copy of that movie. There was also this beautiful song. But the Marathi movie was exceptionally done. But to see it, you will be riveted. Why can't you see the other way? It is based on a true story. So what happened is that this young boy, very young boy, fell in love with a Brahmin girl. They married, they're married. And I understand the anger. And we can debate on whether it is right or not. All the issues nobody is saying. But after they wrote, they had a case. Then the girl's family calls them, both of them, that now we want the approachment. When they come, they kill both of them in front of their 1-year-old child. So what leftists know, they will pick on issues like this. When they want to take up issues, they will pick up issues like this. If you depend that, you are already lost, seated on ground. So I keep saying, and it sounds very odd to people, we need a Oprah Winfrey's. People who discuss individual problems also, but in a Hindu way. They have, if you see Christianity, they have Christian, the psychological, psychiatric concepts all over. They keep saying, we will discuss, we will listen to you, and we will all we do is listen to you. So we will listen to you, but the end goal will not be anti-Christian. They ensure that. So we need to make sure that there are problems in the society. For example, perfectionists. I'm very happy that some of the most strong institutions like some in country, they don't ignore them. But there are issues in our communities. There is some violence or even if not violence, some bad exploitation that happens between communities. I'm not blaming any. There is no one community which is to blame. Many myriad communities are to blame. But the thing is that issue exists. If we don't solve that, the others will take up those issues. So these human issues are important, especially in an era in which it's very easy to be an individual. See, 100 years ago, it was impossible to be an individual. You had one home which is 4 people's life. Everything was dependent. You needed dependent on family for everything. It was impossible to be an individual. Now how easy it is. I go to all over India, I go to Nagaland and Missouri, which are such close to society tribes. And yet now the new 18-year-old is in his room working on mobile, the same reels which somebody in Karnataka, somebody in Madhya Pradesh, or somebody in Hyderabad is watching. Everyone is an individual. If you refuse to discuss individual issue in this age, your enemies will hijack all of those issues for you. They will tell you youth against you. This is what is happening. For example, feminism is of course wrong, but are we saying that there is no problem in a society regarding that? And when those women, when they have come up with those issues, for example, I used to also speak of gender and we are not very high. When some women in these gatherings would come up, they say we all agree with your story. But in practice, this is not so. I suffered so much in my life. And this is a common occurrence. And I've seen my mother, my grandmother, everyone around me suffering. So it's not even just an exception. It's like it was a rampant issue that happened. So we need to tackle those human issues, but in the Hindu way, in a Dharmic way.
Rediscover. For example, when you speak about issues with respect to women and families, right? Speaking up about something is not an attack on the institution. It's something that we have forgotten, even within the sense of understanding ourselves and at the same time understanding Shatrubodh. You alluded to this prior as well, which is that how do you go into understanding somebody else's thought process, ideologies, etc.? Do you go into it with blinders on? Of course, we have some biases that we come in, but some things that we need to keep in mind, that open-mindedness, not to go with immediate bias that they are wrong, they are right. Again, reference when we spoke about how it was, there were certain concepts that we could also take, but let's be cautious about it. Having no framework that in itself is a difficult process in this era. So both for Svayambodh as well as for Shatrubodh, what are those frameworks that you speak about?
First of all, we should always have a healthy dose of reality and experience, even in this. For example, when I read books, I had an idea of our tradition and their tradition. And when I went to Ram, actually, because they say that they are people of the book, so their society is actually quite a close reflection of their book and their concepts. But because we are not people of the book, we have to be experienced. So when I read the books, I had a very just one-sided view of our tradition, which was of course very rosy. When I went to society, because I am an elected brother, also go to all places, districts in India, I have been to more than 650 out of 750, there were significant problems. And that experience changed me a lot. That only we know on ground, because what happens is that organizations which work on ground, they have a different view, as opposed to scholars who are sitting in their studies and doing all of this. We need to combine it. Of course, that scholarship is necessary. We are a tradition which respects rishis and scholars all the time. We always have done that. But that needs to be wedded to experience. Our sadhus, our rishis, it was mandatory for them to roam around the country. And even in their own society, they had to encounter every family wherever they live. For some mass, they had to travel all over India. They had to experience other cultures, other parts of Bharat, other parts of the same Hindu society. So they had a very healthy view of you know how reality is. But if you're just sitting and talking about some idea, then new society is not that simple to understand. So we need some reality check. See, where institutions become bad when they remove reality checks. Science stays on course because science always has reality checks. They are not telling you to believe something which is written. You can go and test. Of course, no, not all go and test. But if you were to go apply the skills, you will find the same results which are written in the books. That is Shabda Pramana. So at that level, in science also Shabda Pramana works. So what are the reality checks? Second, experience. Yatra. We turn Yatra is innate urge to travel. We have this innate urge to travel in human society. We like these two forces of security and freedom. We want security, we want some rules, but at the same time we also want to migrate. We also want to go to different places. Andhra translated that into unity Yatra. By that they showed that Kashmiris will go to Tamil Nadu, Tamils will go to Assam, Bengalis will go to Gujarat. So these biases will end. You will go and live there for 15 days और आपको लगेगा हमारे जैसे लोग हैं यार, थोड़ा सा अलग है. But they are people like us. But if you have never traveled out of your region, even for few years, you believe अच्छा ये खाते हैं based on you will ridicule people in the what they eat, how they speak, what they wear. So, we call them rice walas, they call us roti walas, and all of this will keep happening. But if you go there, and if you live there, you feel that they are also like you. And if you just for a few days withdraw your prejudices, you will find that they also come to you, the other people also come to you. So this reality check is extremely important in whatever we do. I think without that, including women police, they are not your solutions.
Slide back to Shatrubodh, when that reality check happens there as well.
Yeah.
How does one engage with that? The human version of your Shatrubodh, when you see that?
Yeah.
There's a conflict.
Yeah.
How does one deal with that?
One has to be very careful in dealing with what it is. For example, one of them actively sees our children as talents, whether the sons or daughters, that these have to be married or, one way or other, taken to their fold. So we need to be very careful in whom our children and our sisters and brothers are interacting with. Of course, they are there, everywhere. So we cannot avoid them entirely. But that's why making them aware of what the ideas that they are inspired from is extremely important. But we also have to be careful. For example, I have a 7-year-old son. Now he constantly blabbers like 7-year-olds do. So he doesn't respond. So I'm very careful that in front of him, when I say something, if he goes and I live in a city in which 1 out of 2 people are there, not me. So if we go there and say something and they say what they say, as TSA, and all people they don't differentiate between children and women and men, and these ethics doesn't matter at that level. What will happen? So I have to. It's a very thin line. I have to take care so that he is safe, commonsensical. But when he begins the discussion of saying what should be said at what place, then you tell them the entire story because they are targets of these ideas. Otherwise, they will be sitting ducks when we don't inform them. See, nobody wants to talk about bad things. Nobody wishes to. We don't like to do these things. We like to talk about science and arts, beautiful things in life, animated things in life. But the thing is that there are systems and ideologies and societies in this world which would not like to do so, and they are interested in you. And I keep saying, I've repeated this sentence in my book, where Napoleon used to say about war, you may not be interested in Islam, but Islam is interested in you. So it's not your prerogative. You might not like to do these things, but they are interested in you. So you have to know about them. You have to know some basics. So that is an absolute must. And about that reality check, of course, what's written, you can see their behavior and how that happens.
Our page looks very curious, and because that specific murti and why is that used, can you explain something about it?
Yeah, in second edition, I've actually added an explanation. In first, it was a significant mistake. Missed that. It was so much in my mind that I thought that people, it placed my mind that I should mention it. Shasti Hasta Narasimha, 1600 Narasimha. And it is in the Museum of Khajuraho, just outside
the site in the ASM museum. Now there is no extant any other copy of this sculpture. Now the full sculpture and not even description that you find in brackets. So this is the text must have been one. All the other copies of this sculptures must be one. This is the last remaining copy. That is this. Now man is 60 hand, every hand different. In a sculpture in stone, from a single stone, every hand holding a different item. Imagine a civilization which can create this, and imagine a civilization when they encounter with different operating. This is your Svayambodh Shatrubodh. You understand the two, you have a full view of that. That's why I have used it. It's very jarring when you first look at it, but that is the effect that I'm trying to be there. So we have to understand the two systems. Because if we just care about the one, there are some ideas developing which care about this one also. And they will decide to go behind this.
Anybody else? Anybody else with a question? Shatrubodh?
Can I?
Please, any comment?
Any comment on this?
Wonderful cozy gathering.
Yeah, I understand. So, it's not the problem. I have no question per se at this. I've traveled, read quite a few books on these, been reading on it again and again. And the word you use, practicing Hindu. Honestly, I mean what I mean by that. Somewhere I started to feel in my 65 years of service that our religion's openness and freedom that we give has gone a bit too far. जितने भी मैंने बुक्स पढ़े हुए बाहर आप समझे मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ? In each of these, they have still remained the same what they were there in 525, even in 2025. Intellectuals, educated, non-educated, uneducated, all sorts of people I have worked with and spoken to. But internally they have remained the same. हम लोग बहुत ज्यादा ओपन हो चुके हैं. कहीं पे ऐसा हो सकता है कि even a practicing Hindu family, somewhere the children are trying to go astray unknowingly and knowingly. कोई ऐसा सिस्टम आ सकता है, मुझे पता है बहुत मुश्किल है आंसर के लिए, जिसमें कहीं पे भी जो अपने शत्रुबोध के बारे में बोला है उस तरफ से कुछ पैरामीटर्स कहीं पे लग गया तो सोसाइटी बहुत अच्छा होगा. बहुत ज्यादा खराब हो रहा है. I'm not talking about the sangh where we belong to, but definitely outside the sangh there's a big world of the Hindus. And honestly, because I've been the director of an MBA college for quite some time, I've been seeing students of all sorts of things. That's how I speak quite a few languages. But somewhere the family systems are not able to control their children, and that's why I said it's not a question, it's a thought. I want people here, what if you are youngsters, to remember that we have a beautiful system which we have brought in for thousands of years, and we are breaking away from that. You can't tell your children or your students to do certain things at certain time. क्यों करें? किस लिए? बहुत ज्यादा openness हो चुका है. Is it feasible that we can try to bring in some sort of a parameter within the family system that we have? Whatever be our family, whatever be our language, the concept of Hindus have remained the same. But somewhere, that extra freedom that's happening is damaging the society and the Hindus per se. If you tell somebody, don't do this, all they will say is, why should I do it? Now, there's one more thing that I want you to notice this and bring it up in open forum. Maybe you go to more forums than I go to. Definitely, that's why you're sitting there. You see our ads. All the girls are Hindus. All the men are. Why our girls, beautifully as they are shown, are not presented as just girls? Our students who come in are presented by themselves as they are. कहीं पे freedom बहुत ज़्यादा हो चुका है. You're not able to tell, you're not able to control, parents are not able to control. And मेरी मर्जी. We had one sentence in Hindi which was very prominent. अनेकता में एकता. पता नहीं कहाँ गया एकता वो. एकता आवश्यकता बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ के निकल चुका है. Your opinion on that? Understand, not a question.
Yeah. So just like you said, anything in extreme is a problem. So freedom also in extreme will become actually result in bondage. What happens is that a completely, for example, a very free Hindu girl or boy when they marry a Muslim, they actually accept for a completely closed society. They cannot see that this freedom is leading them to absolute bondage. And somehow they are not able to see. I have seen it right in front of my eyes. So this is one principle practiced to the extreme. And our system, our path has always been about the stories where we keep bothering them about excessive of going in one direction, this or that. Other direction is also very obviously bad. When you know, everything is controlled, everything is centralized, nobody is free to do anything, that's obviously bad. But this seemingly opposite direction is also bad. But the second thing is, they queue when they ask. So that I feel that in this era, we cannot shy away from answering Q. Why? We have to, because I've seen a lot of parents say, "अरे बस वो तो होता है, ये क्यों कर रहे हो? वो तो होता है." They are not, our children are no longer willing to accept those answers, whether we like it or not. We need to find rational something. Not everything can be rational. That I also accept and know. But a lot of things can be. A lot of things can be explained as well. Our parents need to be more educated. About the basics of your own dharma. So they are able to answer to their children because they are targeted in these. In their schools, they will ask pointed questions about other community who are very well versed in how to insult and how to probe the other. That why do you worship monkeys? Why do you worship elephants? And all sorts of insulting questions. And when they don't have an answer, when they come home and their parents say, "Oh, ignore this, study science, study art," is that this over time becomes too much for them, and they also start hiding their newness. And part of this is also because we were a democratic society for a very long time. What happens is that 3-4 decades, let more money come in, let us get more confidence, we will have more. The same kids will start coming to our side very powerfully. And I see a time, I do not subscribe to the idea of naming generations, but this so-called Gen Z and Alpha is also there, I guess. Next one. And then next. Beta is running. Beta is running. Okay, I cannot count that. I cannot count also. But Gen, let's say, kids between 16 to 19, 20 years old, classical English. Not all are also minority, but a significantly greater minority of them are also very proud to say they are Hindu, they are this, and if you have a problem, it's your problem, not my problem. Because our generation, what we did, we found it very difficult to rebel from our families and our conventions. And my parents, they told us to hide our Hinduness, keep it in their home. Go outside, earn money. My instruction in my so-called task was earn money, get a government job, do a lot of chori, get a bangla, get a gadi, and do all of this. So, and whatever you do not get into controversy, avoid all controversies, remain and keep these things at home. Then they were very happy people at home, like doing a lot of puja and all, but they failed to answer that to their kids. Because we also wanted to confirm and we found it difficult to rebel. But these kids, they don't think that they are very much individuals. If they are proud about Hinduism, they are proud about Hinduism. There is nothing, nobody will be able to sway. So I am saying, get into the deep, get into the rational of the deep. Start explaining your heart to them, which is very possible in many, many dimensions. Once that happens, and people get attracted towards the most vocal minority in their life. Those who are very confident, very vocal, the majority, 90% is falls in line with them. So, invest in them. Invest in these very vocal Gen Z. And make them what you do, and the majority will follow. Majority always follows. It's not that we don't have to make everyone like us. People say, how do you convince about Shatrubodh 100% of development? I don't need 100%. I don't even need 50 or 51%. I need 3 to 4% of extremely vocal, ideological, committed Hindus who are going to push this idea. They are enough. The silent 96% minority will follow. That is all we need to do. So I see great hope also in this generation. For example, the Insta Gen Z. They started going to all these old ancient temples and places. They started taking pictures and putting them online. And that suddenly they developed this confidence. Our ancestors were not, useless. They created such beautiful, great structures. And it is because of them In our parents' age, that was not there. But now it is there. So there is a lot of strength also I see. I think we should work on them. Get into the game. Do not get rejected and get out of the game. With confidence, get into the game. Influence them. That's how I think it's one way to follow. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Time, which is that we are in some ways work from that defeated mindset, a defeatist mindset to a great extent. But it's also very important for us to remember through such exploration when the persons that you talked about, different facets of our dharma, that Svayambodh does not necessarily only have to exist because the Shatrubodh exists. The nature of our civilization is to be constantly evolving, adapting. And when a younger person asks a question, that is a way to evolve, that is a way to adapt, without forgetting our roots and core tenets and philosophies. So what you have shared with us today, it's made us think on both sides, and I think it's very understanding as to why we put the two together. The amount of thought on the cover, the amount of thought on the writing, all of this shows the immense scholarship that you bring to the table. Thank you so much, Pankaj ji, for joining us today. And this is a conversation I think must be had in universities, must be had with young people. I hope that we get the opportunity to host you. Thank you.